May I please request you to take your seats so we can commence with our next session. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We are about to start. All right, thank you. Seems to be getting better. It is said that a creative agency is as good and as strong as its creative director. And the agency becomes even stronger when the creative director is highly accomplished and a major award winner. Our next speaker is one such creative director, Ali Rez, or Rez, as he's popularly known among people who know him. Rez has been termed one of the top 15 creative directors and top 10 art directors of the world. Last year, Campaign magazine awarded him South Asia Creative Person of the Year. And even though his career spans only 18 years, he's already accumulated over 350 awards. That's quite a haul. But despite the fact that he works in such a capitalist industry, there is a very strong human rights activist somewhere embedded inside of him. One that has led him to make award-winning social awareness campaigns like UN Bridal Uniform and Not a Bug Splat. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Creative Director for Middle East and Pakistan at BBDO Worldwide, Mr. Ali Rez.
आलू खा खा कर खुद आलू बन रही हो।
इन आवाजों ने तो खाने का मजा ही उड़ा दिया है। इनका हल है सिर्फ डालडा के पास, क्योंकि डालडा ऑयल्स में है लो अब्जॉर्प्शन, जीरो कोलेस्ट्रॉल और एक्स्ट्रा विटामिन्स। चलें, आज से सिर्फ अपनी आवाज सुनें और हेल्दी खाना एंजॉय करें। जहां ममता वहां डालडा।
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I'm just waiting for the slide to come on that I see over here, but I don't see here. Oh, there we are. I work for BBDO. It's the world's most awarded network. I look after Middle East and Pakistan. I've been with them for about 4 years, and I absolutely love it. And I'll tell you why when I go through this presentation. I want to start, first of all, with talking about AdAsia just really quickly. This is my last memory of AdAsia 30 years ago. I know we've mentioned it a few times, but this was a poster that my dad brought me from AdAsia at that point, and it said it was one done by Herald and AdAsia, extending the frontiers of mass communications, Lahore. And we've had this hanging in our living room for the last 30 years. I love it. And it was actually a pivotal point for me because I wanted to design like this. I loved it so much. And I just want to congratulate everybody involved with bringing AdAsia back here. Most of all, of course, Mr. Sarmad Ali himself. Pakistan is at a very interesting point right now. We've talked about growth, we've talked about the digital space expanding exponentially, all that stuff. But from a global creativity perspective, we've done remarkably well over the last 5 years. Last year, WARC Work mentioned that Pakistan broke into the top 40 list of the most creative countries in the world. So we're above Lebanon, Belgium, Norway, all very developed economies and who've had very long histories in advertising, and so have we. But now we're finally standing up and staking our ground. Over the last 5 years, we've won more than 400 awards. And this is through every single show in the world. All of these have happened in Pakistan now. And for Pakistan, we've won at every single show that we hadn't won in the past, and we've covered everything. And most of all, this is the first year that Cannes Lion mentioned Pakistan above any other agency in South Asia. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal for us to lift it up to this point, and the perfect year to bring Ad Asia back. But today we're going to talk about how advertising is going to save the world. This is a topic well discussed around the world, and it's especially pertinent here in Pakistan, and I'll explain why. Are you guys familiar with this latest trend tweet? So Laura Gao, who's a product specialist at Twitter, started this meme called the flight attendant meme, and it's basically a scenario in which the flight attendant announces is there a doctor on board, and a dad sitting next to a person nudges the person and says, that should have been you, because that person is not a doctor. They've selected something else as a career. And it's basically gone viral where people are mentioning their own careers, so I decided to do one on advertising. And here's my dad pointing out that they're not asking for an advertising creative to help, are they? And I say, no, Dad, there's a medical emergency. And he says, well, go and see if let's merge data and creativity helps. And this got me thinking, like, what do we do as people in advertising to help humanity, to move the human race forward beyond just commerce? Because it's not really my job. My job is to sell products and to fulfill the brief I'm given and to make sure that the bottom line is met and to keep growing through sales. But is this my job? The sound, please.
Let go! Let go! Stop it! Stop! No, brother, give that to me! Stop!
So you know Black Friday in the US, or White Friday, crazy scenes. This is what we're known to drive, and you know, nothing wrong with commerce. But there is a side effect to overconsumption, and I think Mr. Javed Jabbar brought this up earlier as well, very accurately, that after a certain point, it starts to eat into things. This is a scene from the Easter Islands, where, if you're not familiar with the history, the residents of these islands decided to build these statues, and in order to move these statues around, they had to cut down all the trees to roll them. They made logs and they rolled these statues out. And it came to a point where each village wanted to outdo the other village, and they kept building bigger and bigger statues until they eventually tore down all the trees. And the entire civilization on that island collapsed because of it. And that's a perfect example of overconsumption where you don't balance it just about right with giving back. Another meme that I want to actually point out here is this one called I'm Gonna Tell My Kids. So this is also a very famous one that's going around right now. Here's a local version. I'm gonna tell my kids this was Shaheen Afridi. So Pakistani meme making technology is amazing. Creativity is intense. But this led me to the question, what am I gonna tell my kids about what I do? Am I gonna tell them that I make a lot of money for corporations, which is also a good thing to do, nothing wrong with that, but at the expense of what exactly? there's a lot of awareness now, and people know what the problem is. What's lacking is action in a lot of cases, and we are seeing people step up and take action at a cost. Here's Coldplay. This is the best thing I've found Coldplay to do, by the way. They actually paused their tour because they felt it was environmentally damaging. And they said, we'll tour only when it's environmentally beneficial. It's a huge cost to take on. But it's pretty amazing. They took responsibility. They said, look, we travel so much, we waste so much, and let's just stop doing that. All of advertising can address tension points in society. All of it. Everything that we do, depending on the tone we take, can address problems and actually solve them. Because advertising has the biggest collection of creatives. We have creative power thinking. And that creative thinking is what we need to solve all the problems at hand. And let me tell you, there are a lot of problems. The planet is in a lot of problems right now. And you need creativity to solve a lot of this. But a fundamental shift has begun in advertising as well. And that's what I want to focus on today. This year at Cannes Lion, every year there is a healthcare category in Cannes Lion. And within healthcare, they award a Grand Prix to a brand, and they award a Grand Prix to a charity for the work that they do, which is outstanding. This was the first year that there was no Grand Prix for a charity. They did award a Grand Prix to a brand, but there was no charity corporation that was given a Grand Prix. But that's not a bad thing, because as Rajesh Mirchandani, who's the communications director for the United Nations, came up on stage and said, this tells us that doing good is not the preserve of charities or the public sector anymore. It's being taken on by brands. And brands are actually overtaking charities in doing work for good, doing responsible work. They're taking stock, they're taking responsibility, just like Coldplay has done. I'm going to give you a really good example of what I mean about how advertising filters into everything. Advertising builds culture, and it's a reflection of the culture that we live in. And through the power of persuasion, you can actually build a better culture. Stereotyped advertising, for instance, helps build an unequal society, whereas unstereotyped advertising will equalize it. There's actually a study done that unstereotyped advertising performs better, and this is done by Unilever themselves, they actually put a number to it as well, 25%. They said that it improves purchase intent by 18%. So there is an economic value to it as well. But I'm going to give you a really good case study here on how just changing the tone of how you're addressing your consumer actually influences a lot in that very culture. This is from our office in India.
In 95% of Indian households, only women do the laundry. Ariel, the leading detergent brand in India, has been fighting against this inequality. And in 2016, we used media to drive fathers to share the load, leading to record-breaking sales.
I'm so proud and I'm so sorry. सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है. सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं. ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं है, तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है.
It started with a TV advert that went viral globally, viewed by 65 million people across 22 countries. This advert highlighted how gender inequality was ingrained in India's society. Some of the most influential people in the world showed their support. But our most powerful medium was the product, so we drove equality in doing the laundry by launching the world's first odd even pack. And in another first, we partnered with India's most influential cultural calendar, Kalnirnye, and added the Here's and Her instructions. Influential Indian children's books even came forward and re-scripted their comics to include the values of sharing the load at home. All this left a profound impact on the brand and society. Sales went up an unprecedented 76%. We generated over 2 billion earned impressions, earned media worth $11 million. Consumer engagement increased 4.6 times, the highest ever. And most importantly, 2.1 million Indian men have pledged to share the load.
So this is an amazing job of changing the conversation. If you don't like the conversation, change it. And they did a fantastic job. They've done a new one every single year. Now they're talking to sons and how mothers talk to their sons and how that influences their behavior when they grow up. This was the first observation, that CSR does not have to be a side campaign that you do. It could be if it's powerful enough, but it could be your entire campaign. It could be your brand positioning. This is what they did. They shifted their brand positioning to be more equal in the way they talk to people. The perfect mix here is, of course, you have to start with commerce. We have to build commerce. We have to build sales. We have to build growth. But we have to do it with a certain responsibility to social good. And that generates a very valuable thing, which is brand love. This is the perfect triangle to look at, even from a commercial perspective. The second observation is that doing good work delivers results. This is studied exhaustively, and there are countless studies that show, even the Unilever one, that shows that doing good work connects with people better, and they resonate with it much more. The Kantar report for 2020 says that companies have developed a strong sense of purpose, and they've seen a 175% increase over the past 12 years. That's twice the average growth, just by doing good work. Nearly 2/3 of millennials and Gen Z express a preference for brands. This is a well-known fact. They resonate more towards brands that take a stand, and they strive for bettering society. This is a perfect example, the trash tag. If you're not familiar with this, kids go out there, actually it started with kids, but even adults have taken on, they clean up an area and they put the bags on one side and they hashtag it. All organic. 62% of customers want companies to take a stand. This is a very vital thing, and it'll only get bigger and bigger as we go along. Requires a lot of courage to do this. And I've got the perfect example here, which you guys must be familiar with. It's the Nike campaign for Colin Kaepernick, where they took on an athlete that was very hated by almost half of the population of the United States because he didn't stand up for the national anthem, because he had to make a protest. But they backed him up, and they said their whole mantra was believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And what's really important here is not just the ad they made, it's the stand they took. Their stock went down by 4% after they released this campaign in the first week. What would have been the reaction to remove the campaign and to apologize? But they didn't do that. They actually stuck with it. The stock rebounded and went back up over by quite a bit. It's a perfect example of having the courage to take that stand and to stick with it forever. So much so that when people started burning their shoes, burning their Nike shoes, this is an ad that went out. They actually explained how to safely burn your shoes. This is the brand telling customers to burn their own product if they don't believe in their stand. That's their attitude. That is courage. It has to be authentic. Especially millennials and Gen Z, they will see through it if you're trying to, what we call woke wash, something you've done before. We've got a really good example here. It's something we did here in Lahore a few years ago, and it did remarkably well because it solved a very pertinent problem, and it was very authentic at its heart because it still continued, and even last year there was an extension of the same campaign.
There are an estimated 500,000 homeless people in every major metro city of Pakistan. Most of them are out-of-town laborers who work during the day but have nowhere to sleep at night. Nowhere but the street.
मुश्किल है, बस ये अल्लाह जानता है कि गरीब क्या करे और क्या ना करे. लोग आराम कर रहे हैं और हमारे जैसे गरीब फुटपाथों पे और रोडों पे फिरने लग रहे हैं क्योंकि अपना पेट जो पालना है.
हम लोग यही कहते हैं कि बस दिन जो है वो गुजरे ही ना, कि रात जो है ना वो आई ही नहीं हमारे लिए, क्योंकि ये पत्थर के ऊपर सोना जो है हम लोगों के लिए बहुत मुश्किल है.
This uncomfortable sleep affects the way they work the next day and how much they can earn. Hard work, hard lives, hard beds. Multifoam saw an opportunity to help. With its promise of a good night's sleep, Multifoam decided to provide a solution to people sleeping outdoors by using outdoor. So we designed the world's first bill bed, a billboard designed from the product itself. These simple bill beds advertised Multifoam during the day, and with the flick of a hand, they turned into beds at night. We set up more than 150 bill beds across Pakistan, and since then we have more than 50,000 laborers sleeping more peacefully at night. And we continue to add more bill beds across the country.
ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨੀਂਦ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਅੱਗੇ ਤੋਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਹੈ
ਅਸੀਂ ਬੜੇ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਤੇ ਬੜੀ ਅੱਛੀ ਨੀਂਦਰ ਆਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ
The campaign went viral on social media, generating substantial buzz and attracting the attention of politicians and celebrities alike.
ਨੀਂਦ ਵੀ ਪੂਰੀ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਦਿਨ ਵੀ ਚੰਗਾ ਗੁਜ਼ਰ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਬੰਦਾ
ਥੱਕੇ ਟੁੱਟੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਐਸਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਘਰ ਆ ਗਏ
It renewed people's love for Multifoam.
ਇਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਕੂਨ ਦਾ ਤੋਹਫਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ
But most importantly, it helped countless homeless laborers find a good night's sleep.
So this idea came from a student project. A student did this project in his university, and then we hired him, and it took an agency and a brand to bring the scale to it and to make it actually happen. And it was remarkable of Multifoam to take this on and to go all the way. They installed these in hospitals as well, so they took this forward and sustained it. So it was very authentic at heart. You have to be disruptive, and you have to become culture. This is very vital. We saw this in the Ariel case study as well. You become part of the cultural conversation. And in order to do that, you have to disrupt what's normal. 2 years ago, we did an activation with Ali Zishan as a collaboration. And Ali Zishan is very passionate about protesting against child marriages. So we decided to disrupt the fashion world by actually taking on bridal shows and having a little girl with a school uniform walk out, which was mixed with embroidery patterns of Pakistani bridal gowns to protest child marriages. And the whole message for the UN here was that the UN put out was that a girl who's allowed to remain in school is much less likely to end up in a child marriage than one that isn't. It did very well for them. The United Nations is now planning to do this at the New York Fashion Show with 7 different countries. So it's a global problem. But it was very disruptive. It just infiltrated in a place where you wouldn't expect to see it. We love working with the UN, and UN women especially, because they tend to be very bold and courageous with putting ideas out there. This is something we did last year, which also performed really, really well.
In the Indian subcontinent, forced dowry is a practice in which the groom's family coerces the bride's family to pay the groom in material goods.
Every hour, a woman is killed because her family has failed to meet her husband and in-laws' demand for a higher dowry.
This year, UN Women decided to start a movement by launching a campaign on a very popular platform and hijacking it, morning shows, which routinely feature actual weddings. Our campaign focused around the country's most eligible bachelor celebrity, Ali Rahman Khan, an actor. Through a carefully choreographed PR plan, we leaked the news to crazed fans that Ali was about to get married.
I am engaged and I am getting married. What I've planned is to get married on live television tomorrow on Geo TV on Geo Pakistan at 10 a.m.
Then this happened. To a shocked audience of millions, Ali revealed that his bride was actually material goods.
What is happening?
What's happening, Ali?
This is just to raise awareness about Jahez and the vices of Jahez and how...
And this is a great initiative, I guess. Humbly, we were all shocked.
Using the same platform, we launched the campaign logo as a henna stamp on the palm. The stamped logo featured a strong message at the heart of it. Stop Jahez Khori. Stop dowry mongering.
Jahez Khori.
Jahez Khori.
Jahez.
Jahez.
Jahez Khori.
Jahez Khori band karo ka paigam bahut waazeh hai.
The campaign became the most trending topic in Pakistan during the wedding season and prompted the nation's most influential body, the Islamic Council, to proclaim dowry to be un-Islamic.
Jahez Islam mein had darja mamnu hai.
Ultimately, our symbol of Stop Dowry Mongering became a cultural icon for a national movement against dowry.
So, again, just infiltrating culture and becoming part of it. And there's another case study you'll see that does the same thing, but using that same platform to deliver a message that was negative and turning it into a very positive protest message was the task here. We did posters where we actually, oh, sorry, I don't see it up there. Yep, so these were actual henna. It's the first poster designed with real henna ink on offset paper as well. That's a close-up of that. It has to have impact. Anything you want to bring change to has to have that impact, has to have that punch to make somebody stand up and take notice, and then to inspire them to make that change, to convince them to do that little step, but also to have some far-reaching effect through whatever you're communicating. This is something we did out of our Dubai office in collaboration with the Lebanon team, and it had a lot of impact, and I'll explain why right after the case.
October 2018. Lebanon has been without a government for over 6 months. Lebanese politicians have failed to form a working government, pushing the country into a dangerous economic crisis.
Lebanon has been without a government for 4 months. Saad Hariri has been trying to put together a cabinet for 6 months now.
Lebanon is still without a government.
Public anger is growing as economic conditions worsen.
Each week, the same politicians use the press to print their excuses, blame their opponents, and shift the blame away from themselves. An-Nahar, Lebanon's leading newspaper, decided to make a stand. Introducing the blank edition. For the first time, a paper prints a blank edition, entirely free of all content and advertising. Because if the politicians won't work, then why should we? The country followed suit as people copied our stand. Social media channels, website, and outdoors followed. When interest peaked, Editor-in-Chief Naila Toueni held a press conference calling on people to use the blank newspapers to send their message to Lebanese politicians. Turning a nation into the world's largest newsroom. Writing headlines politicians could not ignore. As the world took notice, the headlines politicians used to hide behind began to call for accountability. Finally, after 8 months of bickering, politicking and turmoil, the Lebanese people got the government they demanded.
There is a huge sense of relief. Things here had really reached breaking point.
So now keep in mind that that's a commercial client. That's not a charity. It's a newspaper that depends on advertising for their revenue, and they were convinced to print an entire edition without any advertising. So that's a whole days of advertising revenue gone. But they believed in it. They believed in taking that stand, and they did it. The edition was printed in the morning, the blank edition, and it sold out so quickly that they ran another run in the afternoon. No, they usually do have ads, but they decided not to do anything that day. But what the beautiful thing here was that it also infiltrated social media. People took this on, they wrote their own headlines, and then they posted it on social media. So it's the perfect merger of traditional media and new media, traditional and digital. And it did really well for them. It did so well that the Prime Minister, after he got into office, actually came to the newspaper and had a discussion about this special edition. A very important thing is that awareness is no longer the only thing you can do. Solutions are needed, actions are needed, and you have to give people the tools to solve a problem. This is a really cool thing that we did in collaboration with an artist, Samar Minallah Khan. who does some fantastic work, and you should check her work out. And it honed in on a very specific problem, which we gave the solution to, literally. And it actually had some results. We also collaborated with an NGO, but this came from, as a commercial client, Berger Paints provided the paints to do this activation. Oh.
पाकिस्तान में जब हम ये देखते हैं कि बच्चों के साथ एक्सप्लॉयटेशन, उनके साथ जुल्म और ज्यादती के वाक़यात, तो मेरे ख्याल में एक बहुत बड़ा इशू जो उनके साथ डायरेक्टली कनेक्टेड है, वो है बच्चों की गुमशुदगी। गाड़ियों के, ट्रक्स वगैरह के फटों पे बने हैं, ये फिर पूरे पाकिस्तान में घूमती है।
So, of course, a big thanks to Summer and her team of amazingly talented truck artists, and the team at Roshni Helpline, who were the folks who actually have the network in order to find these missing children in place, and Saratharine Productions as well. But this was the perfect example of a lot of people coming together to hone in on a problem and to provide a solution that actually led to a result. It has to have scale. It has to have bigness to it so that it makes the news, it gets people to talk about it. This is, right now, you heard 1.7 seconds is the attention span. You need things to break through. I keep telling my clients that their competition is not their competitor brand, but it's Netflix. It's the next TV series that's out there. It's anything that'll take their attention away from whatever it is that they're doing. But this is a fantastic project that's done out of our office in Australia. And again, we tend to think of solving problems for humans, but obviously there are animals on this planet as well that we have to look after. And this is a really, really remarkably simple idea that they came up with. And it actually has generated a lot of good for this cause. And when you look at the idea, you can't help but think, it's so simple, why didn't anybody come up with it before? And the truth is, nobody did. These guys actually cracked it and brought scale to it by giving it the brand voice and the leverage it needed.
Animals are a fundamental part of our world, our culture, our society, and our language, even our filmmaking and marketing. In fact, images of animals appear in approximately 20% of all advertisements that we see. Yet, despite this, animals do not always receive the support that they deserve, until now. Introducing the Lion's Share, an initiative that encourages brands and organizations using images of animals in their marketing to donate 0.5% of their media spend to the Lion's Share Trust. Backed by the United Nations Development Programme, the money will then be dispersed across the world to save species from extinction, preserve wildlife habitats, and look after animal welfare.
Very, very simple, brilliant idea.
I think that if we all do this together, then we can have this positive impact. Amazing.
In 2015, the world adopted a new global development agenda with an ambitious set of 17 sustainable development goals. Now, through the Lion's Share, advertisers have a real opportunity to act and deliver on these sustainable development goals by making a small change in the way they recognize animals in their advertisements.
That's it. It's so remarkably simple. So many brands have used animals in their advertising, but it just took somebody to say, look, just that simple idea of donating 0.5% of your media dollars into this fund will actually help animals. You elevate animals to the level of actors that you pay, because they also deserve that respect. And it's amazing. It's advertising. It still generates commerce. It still gets the economy going. It still generates results. But it does so much good for the planet and for animals. It has to be powerful enough to forever change your behavior. This is brand new from us. We just did this 2 weeks ago. But I promise you that once you see this, it will change your behavior related to this. It changed my behavior. I didn't know this very simple fix that I could bring in my life in order to protect my son. But it's had a tremendous impact just from the numbers we're getting already in just a month, just 2 weeks of displaying this. But again, it's a cause we took on. It was started by Packages and their foundation. And they asked us, they gave us a brief on this. It was through the Shalimar Hospital as well. And it's done just tremendous impact work already.
आपको किसने जलाया?
पापा ने जलाया, मम्मी ने जलाया।
कैसे जलाया?
अम्मी है ना, वो किचन से ट्रे ला रही थी। दादी शाम की चाय पी रही थी। नाश्ता कर रहे थे। चाचा ने जलाया, ताया ने जलाया, मामा ने जलाया।
ये चाय का निशान कभी नहीं जाता। पीते हुए चाय बच्चों की पहुंच से दूर रखें।
So, the numbers we got were stunning. The Shalimar Burns unit said that almost 80% of the cases they got were through negligent results, like people just leaving their tea or dropping hot milk on their children, and just by removing it from a place where the children can get to it, just fixed that problem for a lot of people. So we're already getting numbers back on the amount of people it has impacted and the kind of impact it's had. This was shot by Jami, of course, and he's just done a brilliant job, I think. 10th observation, it has to be all of the above. If you want to bring true change, if you want to affect, impact, and move people, we are in the business of convincing people to not go for this toothpaste, but to go for this toothpaste. And if we can do that, we can change their minds about other things as well. This is the biggest project that we did. So many of you might have seen it before. I love to play this because it still means a lot to me. When we got the brief, we were warned that doing this might actually end up hurting us, in the sense physically, in the sense that when we go to do this project, we might get bombed ourselves. And we still took it on. We still were dedicated to the cause. We went and did it. And the KPI that we had was to land on the desk of the President of the United States. That was a KPI which we set ourselves, that do something so big, so impactful, that it actually lands on that desk. And that was our goal, so we set out to do. So I'm just going to play this. This is called Not a Bug Splat. I always end my talks with this case because it demonstrates all of the above points that I was making earlier.
In the last decade, predator drone strikes in Pakistan have killed more than 1,000 innocent civilians, including more than 200 children.
I no longer love blue skies. In fact, I now prefer gray skies. The drones do not fly when the skies are gray, and for a short period of time, the mental tension and fear eases.
FFR has been trying to raise awareness of this issue. Operators routinely describe their casualties as bug splats, since humans look like disposable bugs from far above. Most protests in Pakistan go unnoticed globally, so we decided to talk to the drone operators directly.
The new project laid out a giant poster of a young child with the hopes that it will be visible from the sky. The group installed the picture in an unnamed town in a rural Pakistani province close to the northwest border with Afghanistan.
The drone operator will henceforth not see what looks like a bug, but an actual face of a child staring back at them. The installation, part of French artist JR's Inside Out movement, was also designed to be captured by satellites to make it a permanent part of the landscape on mapping sites. All this happened under a simple campaign hashtag.
Not a bug splat. Not a bug splat. Huge poster of a child's face.
It is not an anonymous dot on the landscape, but an actual child's face.
The campaign went viral overnight.
With earned media estimated at over $182 million, the installation put the issue on the world map. It was brought up by members of the National Assembly of Pakistan and became the poster image for global pressure that helped reduce civilian and children deaths. We had reached and affected our target audience.
The Not a Bug Splat project is something that could have a lot of impact, and that these children deserve a free and happy lifestyle, and we've taken it.
The girl's picture became a powerful message that said, we are humans, not bugs.
So we did reach our KPI. Every single major publication in the world picked this story up. A lot of them on the front page. Le Monde had it on the front page. Washington Post had it. A lot of publications had covered this activation. The poster cost us $900, and we got $182 million worth of earned media globally on it, just because it was a very simple idea. Every single newspaper organization, Reuters, all of it, they all picked it up because it just became topical and trending. So if you're a creative in this audience, you have the power to think of an idea that can bring change. You've seen it. Just the simplest thought can help animals, can help the planet, can help humanity, can help homeless people. It just takes a really simple idea. That's what we do for a living. We come up with ideas and creative ideas. They don't have to hurt the brand. They can actually, in fact, help the brand. And if you're a brand, you have the power to offer reach and scale to that idea. If a creative comes to you with an idea, it is in your hands to bring it to the world. It's tremendous amounts of power. It takes a lot of responsibility, but wielded correctly, that can lead to very, very amazing solutions. Because it's not about awareness anymore. We all know that we're in trouble. Any report you read about the planet or about pollution or about the world tells us that we're in trouble. It's about action, and action begins with starting to think about what we can do to solve these problems. Because kids are now taking to the streets to solve these problems for us. They're taking the challenge on. We all know her very well. She's the embodiment of everything that we just talked about. She has become the change she wants to see. She sailed a boat from Europe to the US, and that's pretty incredible for somebody that age. That's who we should take inspiration from. Because at the end of the day, you're going to tell your kids that you helped save the world. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another firebrand session from a man you saw a little while earlier, celebrated host of Quest Means Business, Mr. Richard Quest. But while I have Richard here, I've just told him I'm going to hold him to the promise he made to us last night at the fort, which was that we can ask him any question, including Donald Trump and Brexit. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Richard Quest.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah. All right. We have about half an hour, 45 minutes together. I will speak for most of it. You will listen, and then we'll all go home. No, what I want to talk to you about something slightly different than you're used to. Can I have the preview monitors for the various slides in front of me, please, if that's possible? So one of the important things that we want to talk about is making sure that the clicker clicks. The future favors the brave. Sorry? The future favors the brave. The important thing about this is your industry is under vast change. We heard that this morning from Sir Martin Sorrell. And indeed, I'm based and live in New York and know it only too well. On a daily basis, the stories are changing. There is a titanic or Teutonic shift underway at the moment. Michael Iger, for example, Disney, with the new Disney Plus. Streaming has completely revolutionized in the last 6 months as everybody has glommed on. We've got Disney Plus, you've got HBO Max, you've got all the other different streaming services that are now coming online. And they are doing so at a phenomenally fast pace. And yet it comes from a man like Disney. It comes from Iger. Think about it. They are incredibly successful with theme parks. They have amazingly successful studios. They are unbelievably successful in the television area, the product licensing, and they still go along and they create the new Disney Plus streaming service. All of which is designed to create a shift in the industry, and one that you can see very clearly if you look at the, let me see, where is this clicking from? If you look at, this is not, there we go, oops.
See now that there's...
Oh, now of course I've done, haven't I? Let's see, bear with me one moment, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't want to do it, does it? Oh. Well, that was impressive. Shall we just keep going anyway? The point is that Disney has created a revolution. But what I want to talk to you today about is leadership and how the core values of leadership do not change. The core values of integrity, responsibility, what I like to call the moral compass. And today, this is something you're all going to have to think about. Oh, here we go. This is back to Disney. You can see how Disney, you see that blue line, online subscriptions. So at first glance, everything looks amazing. Absolutely amazing. But what we learn is that it's more than that these days. What we learn is that the true values of what we do are more important. Take, for example, these slides are not working. It's clearly not going to work in that sense. Let's not bother with it. Let's go back to the main slide here. Let's just talk about leadership. What are the most important aspects of leadership? Sorry? Most important aspects of leadership. Come on. Self-awareness. What does that mean? Self-awareness. This is what it means. This is Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick is the man who took the knee instead of standing for the national anthem in the United States. In doing so, he heaped upon himself a huge amount of criticism, a vast amount of criticism. But in his own way, he was leading. In his own way, he was, to a large extent, showing what he believes is the definition of
now
leadership.
That there's an equal response to product advantages and brands taking a stand.
So what do you tell your clients?
We are saying you've got to take a stand. You need to find areas in which there's a need in society and you can fill it, and be brave. Go for it, because the customer will respond, will buy the product on that basis.
Right, this is following on very much from what the previous speaker was talking about. Be brave. Kaepernick took the knee. And that's Richard Edelman of the Edelman Group. It's all about, listen, you are likely to spend so much of your time being concerned like Disney with what is the future. Where's the streaming? What comes next? What I'm saying to you is that you need to have with you the values that go with it. And you need now to start thinking about what are the values that I stand and believe in. Kaepernick took a knee. Other people stand up and be counted. And there are many opportunities where we have seen leaders. Who in this room considers themselves a leader? You do? Who else in this room considers themselves a leader? Well, you're either a leader or a follower. So which is it? Are you a leader? Hand up. Or are you a follower? And by the way, if you haven't put your hand up at all, you're neither. And if you haven't put your hand up, you really need to be asking, well, why am I here? So with this idea of obsessional change taking place in this industry, instead, you need to be looking at how you can adapt, how you can change, what you can do that is different. The Muslim ban in the United States, you're all familiar with that? Well, there were numerous opportunities for companies to be involved. There were numerous opportunities for companies to say to the Trump administration, and these companies, particularly in the fintech, the technology, the online business, but say to the government, we do not think this is right. We are prepared to go against it. And if you look very closely, Satya Nadella of Microsoft, he was one of those who came out more than anybody else and said it is wrong. And he did so having worked out that once you are a leader and once you are the CEO, the world changes.
One thing I have learned in the 3.5 years as being CEO is that it's such a multi-constituent job. I mean, I had never thought, I thought it's about shareholders, it's about employees, it's about customers. Guess what? It's about all of them, plus governments, about the broader world, all simultaneously happening. So yes, you are absolutely right. No CEO can just say, I'm, somehow not impacted by what's happening in society, and therefore being clear about your positions is going to be something that you have to be, be clear and articulate on.
This is really important. This is absolutely crucial because you are likely to become totally obsessed by KPIs, return on capital, shareholder value. And in doing so, you are likely to lose your moral compass. Deciding what is that line that you will not cross? What is that important principle that you will not transgress? How far are you prepared to go in your business, in your campaigns, in your advertising, in your marketing? How far are you prepared to go before you say no? Kaepernick took a knee. Nadella said enough when it was the Muslim ban in the travel ban in the United States. And then companies had to really decide when it came to the next thing, compassion. Where you stand, where you actually move forward. Look at all these. These are stories from 18 months ago, 2 years ago, from Charlotte in the Carolinas. You remember the story, correct? You remember the story, the white supremacist demonstration, which met the left-wing demonstration, which met the do-good demonstration. And the result was violence. But what did the President of the United States say? Does anybody remember? What did the President of the US say when faced with a demonstration involving the Ku Klux Klan? What did he say? Donald Trump said, Donald Trump said there were very fine people on both sides. Now, I don't know about you, but as between right-wing extremism and liberalism and fascism, most people do not say there were very fine people on both sides and expect to get away with it. But Donald Trump said that now. This required CEOs to take a choice. You couldn't stand on the dividing line. You couldn't say, well, he meant this. No, he meant that. No, it was okay. Well, maybe it wasn't that good. Well, okay, it was. As a CEO, you had to take a stand because, as Nadella says, today's CEOs are the moral compasses of our society. Leaders, political leaders, have gone by the wayside. It is up to the leaders. And that's why Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, says it's a leader's role in business or government to bring people together. What does that actually mean when it turns about that? It means this: taking responsibility. I want you all to say together, I'm sorry. Well, no, we'll do it together. Doesn't matter what you're apologizing for. 1, 2, 3. What are you sorry for? The point about it is most of us have great difficulty saying, I'm sorry. Try it again. 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 Some of you aren't saying it, either because you can't or you won't. When it came to the CEO of Boeing to say, I'm sorry for the fiasco that is the 737 MAX, it took him months. Maybe it was because the lawyers were there. Maybe it was because he was frightened of litigation. Maybe he wasn't sorry. But eventually, Dennis Muilenburg had no choice. Assuming we see Mr. Muilenburg, he had no choice.
We at Boeing are sorry for the lives lost in the recent 737 MAX accidents. These tragedies continue to weigh heavily on our hearts and minds, and we extend our sympathies to the loved ones of the passengers and crew on board Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. As pilots have told us, erroneous activation of the MCAS function can add to what is already a high workload environment. It's our responsibility to eliminate this risk. We own it, and we know how to do it.
Now, that was really interesting because he sort of says, we're sorry. And then he hedges it a bit about this, that, and the other. But he never actually says, we're sorry. He goes into, we understand this, and we understand that. But everybody's aware he hasn't said, it's another 8-9 months before more leaks, more revelations, more reviews, more everything. Finally, before Congress, he says, I'm sorry, we got it wrong. Compare that to, for example, Tony Fernandez of Air Asia when his plane crashed off Indonesia. The man was out there immediately saying, I'm sorry. We didn't even know what had happened. But what he said is, they're my passengers. They're my passengers. I have to deal with it. So, my point is, and why you may be asked, am I saying this at an advertising conference like this? Because you're likely to get so caught up in your own bullshit. You're likely to believe your own shit doesn't stink. You're likely to believe that in your world, it's no need to take responsibility. Blame the client. Blame the campaign. Blame the new medium. All of these things versus the actual responsibility of saying, I am the leader. It is up to me. I take responsibility for what happens. And finally, I just want to say, this is the most important bit. Integrity. Integrity. What does it mean? What does integrity mean? Self-esteem, yeah. What else? Come on. That's the definition. That's it. The true definition of integrity is doing the right thing without telling anybody. Doing the right thing. How many times have you done the right thing and immediately told somebody? True integrity means doing the right thing when nobody's looking. The best example of this, I always think, is the next person I want you to listen to, Christine Lagarde. Now, Christine Lagarde was the managing director of the IMF. Before that, she was the Minister of France in Finance in France. Today, she is the president of the ECB, the European Central Bank. There is nobody in this world who better embodies the concept of what we're talking about, as she explained to me. Do you worry that you can be bamboozled by the economists?
They've always tried to do that with me, you know? When I joined as Minister of Finance, they all said at the time, oh, she's a lawyer. Well, I can listen, I can absorb. I've eaten a lot of files and tried to understand a lot of concepts. I don't master them, and I'll never be a PhD in economics, let alone macroeconomics or econometrics. I've had it at the IMF as well. You know, it's a fantastic institution which is largely dominated by economists. They probably all thought at the time, oh, she's a lawyer. She was a finance minister for a little while, but she's just a lawyer. Well, again, I can listen, I can absorb, I can learn from everybody. I'm sure the same thing will happen to me at the ECB. We'll see.
Amazing foresight as to what she needs to do. So I'm prepared to now take questions on this, anything else. But I ask you, as you head out here, ask yourself, what would you have done as CEO, faced first of all with the Muslim travel ban? Would you have taken an example? Would you have taken a stand? Would you take the knee? And if somebody of your employees takes the knee, would you stand up for them? If faced with a leader who says there were fine people on both sides, and that leader happens to be Donald Trump, what would you do? Would you walk on the other side of the street? Would you look the other way? The definition of true leadership these days is this. In 2019, true leadership in a company involves recognizing that you, in the absence of government, you are going to be the moral leaders. You are going to be the moral compasses, because your employees are going to be the ones that you are looking after, and their rights, responsibilities, and futures. So, I am happy to answer any questions on this or any other subject, for the next however long I've got, next 20-odd minutes, at your discretion. Are there microphones, please? Okay, what I suggest is have a microphone on that side. Is there a microphone on this side? Do we have one microphone? Hang on. Well, line up starting on that side if you've got a question. Oh, okay, gentleman down here. Gentleman down here. And can somebody bring me another microphone out, please? Another microphone, please. Yes, sir, your question.
If you would like to do an interview for your program and from Pakistan, who would you interview for Quest for Business?
The Prime Minister. The Prime Minister. Now, what would I ask him? You'll have to wait until I get that interview. Okay, you stand on that side. We'll have one on each side. Next question. Why don't you just walk your way to the microphone on that side? Sir, do me a favor. Stand there. Okay. And people will come to one side or the other, all right? So if you've got a question, make your way to the sides.
Hi, Richard. I just want to ask, what could we do in schools to allow children to grow up with these values, and what do you think roles of teachers are as leaders in?
You've got to ask yourself, where did we lose them? Well, we lost them on the way. We can give you one of 1,000 different reasons. We all know them. Breakdown of society, breakdown of the family, breakdown of law, trust and order. Doesn't really matter. And you can go back to a very basic symbol, do unto others. Do unto others as you have them do unto. That's a bit too simplistic. The golden thread, as it's known, the golden rule, do unto others. But ultimately, what I would ask is that you as leaders consider it. I think your first duty, role, responsibility is obviously to train, but put it in yourself. Come to terms with it yourself. How will I deal with those issues? If I've got a global company, how am I going to deal with same-sex relationships in those countries where it's legal? How am I going to deal with gender equality? Until you are happy with your understanding of it. Does that give you a start? Look at yourself, which is why I'm really pleased to be talking about it here. I could have talked about business, I could have talked about economics, but you're leaders in an emerging market country. You, ladies and gentlemen, are the elites. You set the tone. You set the agenda. Where you go, others will follow. Next question.
Yeah. Hi. Very quick one. Thank you so much for being here, Richard. So we all know that we're always doomed to repeat history. And I think you have far more exposure than anyone else of what's happening in the world right now. Fascism is on the rise again, whether you look to the east, to the west. It's happening. Do you think it's going to take another world war to set things right again?
Well, I would have taken what you've just said. Do you think it's going to... I would have also put God forbid in there. We've got to ask ourselves, how close are we to something nasty? Well, look, let's go straight for it. You have an upturn in, for want of a better word, protectionism. I'm going to get there. Just overnight, you've got the US saying it will put tariffs back on Argentina and Brazil on steel. And it's looking at 100% taxes on France for the digital tax, right? Japan, all the same, right. So you've got all of that. You've then got a middle class in the developed world that basically says we have had two fingers stuck up to us for the last 40, 50 years. We've been ignored. A middle class, particularly in the last 30 years, that says those at the bottom, those at the top have got everything. The top 1% have now got even more. Offensively more. And those at the bottom, there's safety nets. And we've just been taxed and taxed and taxed. And governments today don't have our values, and so on and so on and so on. And so you end up with Brexit. You end up with a populace that votes for Donald Trump. In a funny sort of way, Emmanuel Macron was a result of this. He's now very establishment, but the very election of Macron in France was that. You can ask, was Imran Khan's election here? Well, I mean, it's slightly different point of view, but what's the similarity? And so you throw all of it into the mix. Now, it is a leap of faith to go from that to World War III. But it's a cautionary tale. Because the moment you start putting restrictions, the moment you start having hate campaigns, the moment immigrants don't feel welcome, the moment you have... Let's take in Britain at the moment, the election. What is one of the biggest negatives for the opposition party, the Labour Party? Allegations of anti-Semitism. Now, for God's sake, who would have thought that a mature political party, 70, 80 years after Hitler and Nazism, is going to be accused of anti-Semitism? So you're right to issue the call and the warning. Whether or not we are clever enough to pull ourselves... I'm pessimistic. I don't think it's going to be World War III, but I'm pessimistic. Good example is Donald Trump. We thought yesterday, God help us, we thought that China and the US were just about going to come together and make a deal. And then out of the blue, he announces tariffs on Argentina and Brazil. It is, and the market goes down a couple of 100 points. It is as if somehow the man is determined to create an environment pitting us one against the other. But that's for the US electorate to decide next year. Whether he wins or not, I'll happily answer a question later if someone asks.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Richard. I have the mic. Your message of this I'm sorry has really ignited me and excited me.
I'm sorry, slow down.
Your message of I'm sorry, this has really ignited me and excited me. I was just wondering...
Hang on, why?
Because it goes for the soul purification. It goes for the soul litting. It lifts up your inside.
There was a story of a doctor. There was a story of a doctor who nearly made a mistake during, it was in the New York Times last week. He nearly made a mistake in an operation. Patient nearly died. Patient didn't. The first thing the doctor did when he went into the patient's room afterwards was said, I'm sorry. I nearly killed you.
Okay.
And the patient said, well, I'm very glad you didn't, but that's okay. Because if there's one person in this room who has not made a mistake, please take the microphone and take over the rest of my speech. Because you've probably got a sainthood in front of you, and we should all be bowing down in front of you. So, what was your question?
Okay, the second part of the question, basic question was, is this notion the same in the people of the country you originate? Because in 2003, the premier of your country invaded a country which was innocent, and there was no weapons of mass destruction found afterwards. Are the people of the United States sorry on that?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm not from the United States, I'm British. But don't worry, I have spent my entire adult life...
Britain was part of that war.
but don't worry about that. No, it's all right. I've spent my entire adult life traveling the world, quasi-apologizing for things that we might or might not have done 50, 60, 70 years ago. And being here in Pakistan, I'll leave that there. Let's not get into that. You're talking about apologizing for the invasion, the second Iraq war, correct? The second Gulf War. I think Tony Blair has come pretty close to apologizing for the whole weapons of mass destruction. There are those in the US that have not. There are those in the US who still say they would have prosecuted that war in the way that they had. That is a matter between them, their conscience, and the electorate. Who's got the microphone? Oh, yes, ma'am.
So you're a leader and you must have been in a lot of positions of conflict. Can you give us an example of a time when you were in a moral conflict and you used the moral compass to steer out of it?
Yes. We've all faced tremendous personal difficulties in our lives in different ways. I don't think it's any secret that some years ago I was arrested in some extremely salacious circumstances. Well, if you don't know, look it up. Let's face it, that's the only reason half of you are here. To see if and I think what you have to do is you have to recognize what's happened in your life. And you have to decide, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to go down the tubes and just wallow in it? Or am I somehow going to draw on whatever is within and the support of others? And it comes down to one of the things I learned about this is this idea of doing the right thing when nobody's looking. Doing the right thing when nobody's looking. I noticed recently, I was filling in a document of some sort in which I was going to get some money back. And I noticed the calculations were wrong. Now, it happened to be that the money was coming back from my sisters. And it wasn't a huge amount, but it was all from the estate of our mother, who'd just passed away. And I suddenly noticed, oh, no, they've miscalculated. They forgot to add this in, or take off that. And I thought, what, should I do anything? No one notices. This email has gone to all of us. This email is, we're talking a matter of pounds. I thought, this email has gone to nobody else has picked up on it. Should I say something? Who would have said something? Who would have just ignored it? You're all liars. Of course I said something. I immediately sent the email saying, oh, I think you'll find section 4, paragraph 3, subsection 6. I think you've miscalculated. You've forgotten to add in X. Did I feel better afterwards? Yes or no? Not particularly. That's what I mean. You know, when I had my lifetime crisis, as everybody, who in this room has not had a lifetime crisis? All we're talking about are the degrees of it and how you learn from it and where you go with it next. And it is so easy after a crisis of any sort to just pretend it never happened, but you don't. That's what I want you to take away from today. Is there another microphone on this side? Yes, sir.
Richard, your take on Trump calling CNN fake media most of the time, and where do you see the role of digital media in upcoming US and UK elections?
Fake media. What is fake media? Go on.
When fake media, when not real news are going there.
What is fake media? Sorry? All right, hang on. Fake news. Who said that? Who said that? Who said all media is fake? Well, you're the biggest hypocrite in the room because you're selling to them. Am I out of time? 10 more minutes. Between what? I try to avoid both. Sit down. No,
okay.
Fake media. I want to just do... Yeah.
I have a question.
No, I want to just deal quickly with fake media, very quickly. The president calls my company fake media. The president calls the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post fake media. Okay. We employ at CNN about 3,000 journalists. We spend nearly $400 or $500 million a year in coverage. Look, if the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the BBC, CNN, if we are fake media, who the hell isn't? No, what amazes me is when people get their news from these weird websites and these weird posts on Facebook that they see. Why the hell do they believe them? I mean, if I want to know what's happening tonight, I will switch on my network, I will switch on the BBC, Sky, CNBC, even Fox, and Al Jazeera. Any one of them will tell you what's happening in an honest and truthful way. So I suggest, sir, that the moment you hear this phrase fake media, you run for the hills. Because the only thing fake about it is the title, sir.
Okay, I have a question on Donald Trump. He is an elected president of one of the top countries in the world. So why do people really hate him?
What was that question? Why do people... Okay. You have to understand, the United States is not the East Coast and the West Coast. The United States is that very large part in the middle. And there, those are the people I was talking about. They feel they have been done over many years. You can go back almost, from Reagan times, through Carter, through Bush's. They feel that every single time there's been a change, they've lost out. And I'm sure you've all seen the movie Broadcast News, and you've also seen, I'm mad as hell. I'm mad as hell, and I just want to get out. That's what this is. Suddenly, there was somebody who said, he's a fat pig. Suddenly, there was somebody who was speaking the language that we would use in a bar or at a football match. Now, the fact that this person happened to be the President of the United States adds a certain frisson to it. But let me ask you this question. If your children or grandchildren suddenly swore or used the sort of language the President does, she's a fat pig, he's a loser, and you heard them say this, and you reprimanded them that this wasn't a satisfactory way to have discourse, and they said, oh, but the President of the United States says it. Well, what sort of role model is that? Now, you might say to me, the President's not a role model. He's a political leader. Except for one thing. In the US, they have a unitary structure. So the President is head of state and head of government. And so you've got to ask yourself, why do people hate him so much? Because he's divisive. They hate him so much or dislike him so much because he's set out to divide and conquer, which is exactly what he's done across the United States in a very effective way. And arguably, the real question is, why are the Democrats finding it so difficult to counter it? Because he's tapped into the same thing that Boris Johnson and others have tapped into. Sir, microphone down here, please.
No, we're
taking the gentleman down here. Can somebody tell me how much longer they want me to go? The clock's gone to 0. Do you really want me to stop? Last question.
Trump is going to win next year?
Do I think Donald Trump... Oh, look at that, the time's finished. All right. Do I think that Donald Trump... All right, let me ask you. How many people in here think Donald Trump is going to win the next election? Go on, let me see. How many people? How many people think he won't win? Okay, stop it. Let's stop this. We're going to do it, and every single person is going to put up their hand for one option or the other. This is not one where you can sit on the fence. You're supposed to be elites. Be elite. How many people think Donald Trump is going to win the next election? Yeah, that's a little... How many people think he won't? About half and half. You're too late. Voting's finished. We're not in Pakistan now. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a good note upon which to say thank you.
चलेगा नेस्कैफे, क्योंकि जागना तो पड़ेगा।
Ladies and gentlemen, just a quick announcement. This is not a scheduled comfort break. We're just taking a few minutes to set up the system for our next speaker, which is Mr. Yasuharu Saski. So can you please be seated? We're not going to take that long. Do not wander off. It is very hard to get that many Pakistanis back into the same room.
Just give them time.
Sorry?
Just give them time.
I need a second. I don't know. Probably will take no more than 5 minutes, so please, can you make sure that you're either in the hall or no more than 2 minutes away from it. Ladies and gentlemen, we would have liked to start immediately, but I think by the time it will take us to bring people back in, we will take a coffee break now and then come to Yasuharu Saski's presentation. You definitely don't want to miss that. So we're going to take a quick coffee break, about 15 minutes, and be back. But please be back in 15 minutes. I can see Salmat Saab clasping his hand.